YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. And we got edge rusher rankings today for the 2020 NFL season. Been going through all kinds of player rankings by position. And now we're on to the edge rushers. Very fun one to rank because there's a lot of good pass rushers. A lot of good pass rushers. Some important things before we get started that you must know before getting into these here. This applies to every single one of these rankings. It's for the 2020 season, so they're basically predictions. But for this specific video, a couple things. The top 7 guys, I can really make the case that any of them, you can have an argument that any of those top 7 guys for me that you'll see in a little bit are number 1. You can make the case. At the end of the day, somebody's got to be 1, somebody's got to be 7, somebody's got to be 2. You get the point. Another couple things here. You got J.J. Watt. I include with the pass rushers this year. I usually include him with D-line. We'll talk about why he's in this video once we get there. And Kyle Van Noy, now with the Dolphins, we've seen him kind of play a hybrid role, off-the-ball linebacker plus a pass rusher. I'm going to include him with the outside linebackers, rather than the pass rusher, so he will not be in this video. And at the end of this video, after we get through the rankings, we're going to talk about Jadeveon Clowney, we're going to talk about Yannick Ngakoue, and Everson Griffin. 3 guys. We'll talk about what range I would rank them if they were locked into play this year on a team. So we'll talk about those guys at the end, so stay through the end. I would really appreciate that. Would also appreciate a subscription here because we're trying to reach 60K by week 1 of the NFL. We have 2 channels. Please help us out. Would really appreciate that. Follow our Twitter. We got all kinds of polls, NFL talk, breaking news, and once this video is up, we can create a poll on who is the best pass rusher in football. You guys can vote. We have a podcast as well, so anything you're trying to find there, if you want a link, you'll find those down in the description and the comments of any video we have here at the Goat House. So on to the bottom portion of these rankings, and I've always been ranking 32, but for the pass rushers, I just felt like I had to get that extra guy in there because it's so tight. It's really tough splitting these guys up. So 33, I got Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers. Had a pretty solid rookie season last year, and this guy was, kind of a raw prospect. You want to put a little more strength on him, so will he be that productive in his first year? And he's pretty productive, so I expect him to continue to grow here for the Carolina Panthers. And Bud Dupree at 32, an interesting one, was never really got that bust label, but it was pretty close because it was a first-round pick, and he never lived up to the expectations until contract year last year. Had an insane year. So which Bud Dupree we're going to get? It'd be a bit much to expect the same exact from last year. Maybe not as productive, but pretty close. It was a pretty impressive year for him there in Pittsburgh. 31, I got Max Crosby, a second-year guy. What impressed me about Crosby is they like to move him inside at times, mainly an edge rusher, but the versatility stands out to me, and it looks like a steal for the Raiders, of course. So very impressive for him, and he's going to continue to grow as well. 30, Trey Flowers. The Detroit Lions gave him that big contract last year after he had an impressive season with the Patriots the year before, especially in the playoffs. It was a little disappointing, I guess, compared to his contract last year, but I really think he'll start to get things going. Based on last year, he probably doesn't make the top 32, 33, whatever it is, but I think he kind of gets going a little better this year. They did add some other pieces, though, so we'll see. I still expect him to get the full load there as a pass rusher. 29, Justin Houston of the Colts. Pretty productive year, especially given he didn't have too much help there on the front of the defensive line there. But a guy that's really, compared to a lot of these guys, a guy that's really not going to get any better. We kind of know where his talent's at, so around this range. But I expect another pretty productive season. They had DeForest Buckner on the inside, so could that help a guy like this, play better here? Matthew Judon at 28. Some question marks there. Will he play? Is something going to change with the Baltimore Ravens in terms of scheme? Because they made some major changes across the defensive line. It's still tough. It's still up in the air. Don Martindale, really good defensive coordinator. I just don't see him switching from the 3-4, but they do have the players to kind of make that switch. So how does Judon, kind of fit in there? But pretty productive last year. They're keeping him around for a reason. But I think there was no contract extension for a reason as well, because they did bring in a lot of other players. They could switch things around, but I don't know if he's worth more than the franchise tag. So I think that was a good move for the Ravens. Robert Quinn now with the Bears at 27. This is one that's kind of up in the air. He had a really good year for the Cowboys last year, playing at a 4-3 end. We've seen him on several teams in the past. playing a 3-4 outside linebacker, and it didn't really feel like he fit that. So he'll go back and play 3-4 with the Bears, so that's kind of the concern. But now playing opposite of Khalil Mack in a really good defense, I expect him to be pretty productive. Maybe not as much as last year. A lot last year. Had a lot of free I don't want to say free, but had a lot of easy shots at the quarterback last year. But definitely a career year for him. And now we get to see him in that very good Bears defense. Brandon Graham at 26. We've seen him starting to decline a bit. Say a few years ago he was way higher than 26. So he's declined a little bit. Still a good pass rusher. They had Javon Hargrave in there in the mix, and that kind of gives them the flexibility to move around a bit with their different looks on their defense there. So that could potentially help Brandon Graham be more productive. Ryan Kerrigan at 25. It's a tough one to rank because they got Chase Young, they got Ryan Kerrigan, they got Montez Sweat. How much playing time is each of these guys going to get? It's really tough to tell. I didn't rank Montez Sweat because I think the majority goes to Chase Young and Ryan Kerrigan. I'm a huge Montez Sweat fan, though. I think the future is very, very bright. But Kerrigan, I think him and Sweat are going to have to split a little, so I think both guys kind of drop in the rankings just because, splitting a little bit and maybe a little less production, but very good pass rushers there. Ryan Kerrigan still at number 25. Next group of guys, Whitney Mercilus at 24. Need this guy to stay healthy, of course. We need J.J. Watt to stay healthy. We'll talk about J.J. Watt in a little bit because this whole scheme of the Texans pretty much changes when one of those guys is out. One of those guys being out changes everything. Mercilus, with J.J. Watt, he's gonna be a lot more productive than he was last year, but he was pretty productive, more of an impact than maybe the stats will show. I believe around 7.5 sacks, more productive than that. But we're going in a new year. As of right now, Mercilus will be on one side, more of a outside linebacker pass rusher, and J.J. Watt will be on the other side, more of a defensive end. Edge rusher there. So should be fun to watch. Hopefully these guys stay healthy. Harold Landry was one of my guys of the draft a couple years ago. Was a steal. I thought he was a first-round talent. The Titans get him, and he was pretty darn productive last year. He really had to carry the load for the edge rush group of the Titans. Really had to carry it. And we see him start to make those strides, start to make those steps. And I think he created sacks for the rest of the team as well. You can notice that when watching him quite a bit. So he can continue to take that next step for Harold Landry. Dante Fowler's another tough one to rank. I thought he had a really good year last year. A lot of pressure, a lot of production. That's playing outside of Aaron Donald. Now he goes to the Falcons. It's tough to rank these Falcons pass rushers because it seems like guys are, you hate to say it, but guys are kind of like dying off almost as pass rushers on the Falcons. But they did make some changes, later last year that kind of got things going. They switched some coaching duties around, where their roles are at in terms of the coaching staff. So maybe that could help, not playing outside of Aaron Donald anymore, but they do have a guy like Grady Jarrett on the D-line, so that helps. Maybe not quite as productive as last year, but not too far off. I thought he was pretty underrated based off last year's play. Preston Smith at 21 from the Packers. He had a pretty impressive season in terms of the pass rush production because he's mainly been a run-stopping outside guy, with a little bit of a pass rush presence. When you're an outside guy, an edge guy, you definitely want the pass rush presence, and he kind of added that to his game. Pretty impressive. I think having we'll talk about Zadarius Smith in a little bit, but having a pretty similar stat line, I think, confuses some people on which one is much better than the other. I thought Zadarius Smith kind of created for this guy. Not that he needed somebody else to create for him. He had a really good year, and obviously, just a year ago, before he was on the Packers, he wouldn't really come close to this list. So the improvement is very impressive. Jason Pierre-Paul at 20. Jason Pierre-Paul didn't play the whole season last year and still had around 8 sacks there. That was pretty impressive, especially considering that two things, that he might not come back in that season. Earlier before the season even started, we kind of thought that. Number two, they switched to a 3-4, which we kind of thought maybe Pierre-Paul is just a 4-3 end guy. But no, he was pretty darn impressive, pretty darn productive in that 3-4 with the short amount of time. Melvin Ingram, a guy, a few years ago I'd put him way higher in this. Maybe, I don't want to say decline, but maybe not quite as good as he was a few years ago. But it's a do-it-all guy. He's I call him the glue of that defense because he does a lot. He creates. He's not going to get a ton of production. He's going to create for other players. He's going to create for Joey Bosa. He's going to create, for those linebackers. They got Kenneth Murray in there now, who can actually play somewhat of a similar role because we've seen Kenneth Murray line up as a pass rusher. It's a little almost the similar but the opposite at the same time because Ingram's a pass rusher first, but kind of can line up as an off-the-ball linebacker, can line up in the D-line. Kenneth Murray's an inside linebacker first, but we've seen him line up and be very impressive off the edge for Oklahoma there against some really good offenses. So, they have a guy like Nwosu who's a similar style player too, and they got two somewhat new because Tillery's second-year guy and Linval Joseph is new this year. So Ingram kind of creates for those guys, and that's why he's impressive. 18, DeMarcus Lawrence. Maybe I'm a little lower on than most people for DeMarcus Lawrence. I think he's a very good player. The pass rushers are really, really good. So we got guys in the 20s here that are very good pass rushers. Just shows how good these pass rushers are. But DeMarcus, I want a little more from him. I want a little more. I always thought he was a little overhyped, but there's a reason for it because he's a very good player. I just need to see a little more. It felt like Robert Quinn was the better pass rusher last year, even though I know DeMarcus Lawrence is better. But for the Cowboys, he did face some double teams, quite a bit of them. I just want more out of him now. Since he got that contract, I want more. Josh Allen at 17, top-tier rookie last year. Still a lot of potential. Jags, sticking to that 4-3, even though you felt Josh Allen was a 3-4 guy, but now they're bringing in some different players where they could switch it around a little bit. So that could make Josh Allen even better, and that could be pretty scary. But he's going to continue to grow. This guy is a top 10 pass rusher to making, even though there's a lot of good young pass rushers up there. So Josh Allen at 17 for now. Very impressed with his rookie season. Top 16, I got a rookie at number 16. I got Chase Young, one of the better pass rush prospects in quite some time. He has the pieces around him. Kerrigan, Montez Sweat will be rotating in. On the inside, you got Ioannidis, you got Jonathan Allen, you got Jerome Payne. Ron Rivera leading the way. So this really helps Chase Young in his rookie year. He's gonna be very productive. It's gonna be double-digit sacks for Chase Young. A lot of production, a lot of pressure for Chase Young on the Washington football team here. 15, Bradley Chubb. Tough one to rank because we've seen him miss majority of last season, and that kind of hurt the Broncos, kind of hurt Von Miller. But I expect him to stay healthy in those two together. Another year in Vic Fangio's defense. Really, it almost feels like Bradley Chubb's first year in a way with Vic Fangio's defense. It's gonna work wonders here. So Bradley Chubb will be very productive here for the Broncos. I got Frank Clark at 14. Another tough one to rank because sometimes he'll disappear, but then sometimes he'll look like an elite pass, literally an elite pass rusher. You see the Texans game in the playoffs. Games like that will pop up like crazy. And then kind of given that it was his first year on the Chiefs, he can continue to improve. So Frank Clark has got, he could be around here, 14, 15. But he's got that upside, that ceiling of he can be a top-ranked guy. So it's a tough one. I'm excited to see how he plays this year for the Chiefs. And then you got Joey Bosa of the Chargers at 13. Another guy, very solid pass rusher. I don't think he has lived up to the hype quite yet. I really hasn't. I really don't think he has. Another guy, I want to see more from him. I definitely want to see more. He's definitely more productive when Melvin Ingram's in there, but that's kind of not concerning, but close because you need a certain player in there for him to be, better. So some of these pass rushers don't, but he still has upside. He's still going to continue to get better. Just want to see a little more from him. And then we got to the next group of guys. D Ford at number 12. D Ford's, I think, is one of my guys. I don't think anybody else is going to rank him this high. I think he's quite underrated, especially as one of the Chiefs that the previous year. The pass rush that he got, the games that he, kept them in from that defense. The defense was pretty darn bad that year, and they really shifted things around this year, and they went from bad to pretty darn good, and even without D Ford, but they replaced him with Frank Clark. But D Ford is such an important player. Like, even on the 49ers, D Ford was a key. I think D Ford and Arik Armstead are key pieces to why that defense was able to begin what they created because they were running more of the Leo defense. You got one side, your pass rusher is Nick Bosa, who we'll talk about in a bit, hand the dirt, and then D Ford is more of that outside linebacker. You're running one side with the DN, other side with an outside linebacker, and D Ford, which would actually impress me, dropped in coverage a lot of times towards the middle of the field and was pretty impressive in that aspect. And they're able to do that because they have Arik Armstead in front or inside D Ford, who can kind of slide out, play the DN, and can play on the inside. But D Ford is so important to this team. We've seen him miss games. They're so much better with him. even though they have the depth of players to play without players like this. It's just so much better with him. So I think D Ford is very underrated. I got J.J. Watt number 11, and I've always ranked J.J. Watt with the D lineman because Texans technically have run a 3-4. He's a 3-4 end, but he does rush from the edge as well. And why I ranked him with the edge rushers, I think we see more of that edge rush presence from J.J. Watt, or snaps, I should say, reps, which we started to see last year. If Mercilus and Watt are in the game at the same time, they want to rush these guys off the edge. They're different types of pass rushers. J.J. Watt's going to be hand in the dirt. Mercilus is more of that outside linebacker type of edge rusher. And then the inside of them, they add Ross Blacklock, so they can do a mixture. And Charles Omenihu is going to step up this year as well. But they're going to have 2 defensive linemen inside of the 2. They're going to have 2 inside linebackers, that being Bernardrick McKinney and Zach Cunningham. And then I think they're going to run a lot of nickel packages, which results in Watt rushing from the edge. They got a load. They got a crazy depth of defensive backs. So 5 defensive backs, I should say, they're going to run. So a nickel corner, of course. So 3 corners, 2 safeties. So that, I think that leaves them with Watt rushing off the edge quite a bit. Staying healthy is the key. I'd probably have him ranked better than number 11 if I can trust him 100% to stay healthy. The defense changes so much if Mercilus or Watt is out of the game. Their specific games change a bunch, but the defense in general. So stay healthy, that's the key here. Nick Bosa at number 10. He's going to continue to grow. He's going to continue to climb the ranks here. I thought, not super productive, I guess, in terms of sacks. He was productive, but a lot of other guys had more sacks. But it's really not about that. He had those impact plays, would show up at the right moments, would make the sacks, make that play at the right moment there, the perfect situation. So that was kind of what stood out for me for Nick Bosa. Shaq Barrett, number 9, had a ridiculous 19.5 sacks last year. Absolutely ridiculous. I trust that he can continue to play at a high level. I've seen enough where he can do it. But at the same time, still if you trust him, still if you believe in him, you do want to see more. You do want to see more pressures on the kind of the off play, the non-sack plays, I guess. You want to see more of those pressures. It's not all about the sacks, but was really impactful, had a really big season for them. Now he's got Jason Pierre-Paul full-time on the outs, hopefully on the outside of him, unlike last year, so that can help the duo there as well. But Shaq Barrett, even though, I'm a believer, big-time believer, you still want to see more. Let's run it back, We're on to the top 8 now. Cameron Jordan, number 8, continues to be consistent, continues to be that top-tier pass rusher every single year. Maybe the difference, when we're splitting hairs here, these other guys ahead might be getting better, most of them. Cameron Jordan probably going to stay about the same, which is still top tier, but that puts him at number 8 for now. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, top 7, I can make a case for any of these guys kind of being number 1. That's how tight they are. So top 7 are all top tier. I got TJ Watt at number 7. Big year for him last year, obviously, in that defense, and I'm impressed at where he's able to be at this early on in his career. I did not expect him to be this good early on in his career, so that's impressive. So what is he going to do next year? What is he going to do another year from now? What is he going to do 3-4 years down the line? So that's the impressive spot. Like I said, the top 7, there's got to be a case out there for them being the very best pass rusher football. So not much splitting these guys up. I think some of these other guys were doubled a little more. So that could be that's nothing almost, but that could be just enough to kind of split these guys up. Myles Garrett, pretty productive considering he missed a group of games there at the end. So if he finished it out, he could have been, towards the very top in terms of the production. But this is still a young pass rusher that's getting better every single game, every single step of the way. I think one of the better 4-3 defensive ends in football. I see most of these guys at the top are 3-4 pass rushers. See Myles Garrett, Cameron Jordan, 4-3 defensive ends here. And Myles Garrett can continue to grow until he maybe is the very best pass rusher in football, which could be anytime soon. Chandler Jones, all about the production there. He's got the production every single year, no matter what team he's on. Going to be interesting to see what they do this year. They add Devon Kennard, who's been kind of an off-the-ball guy, plus a pass rusher. Then you got Isaiah Simmons, who's been pretty much everything. So what are they going to do? It's going to be interesting to see what they do with this defense. Chandler Jones, I'm confident, could play any type of edge rusher there, defensive end or outside linebacker, pretty much the same to him. So he'll be productive either way. It's interesting because he didn't have a whole lot of help last year, and he still had all those sacks. But again, I think I could see the production being a little less this year. Some production going to. I have a feeling they're going to use Simmons as a pass rusher quite a bit, not full time, but some production can be divided up between those guys. But coming at number 5 after a crazy season last year, and we're on to the top 4 here, the big top 4. I got in my opinion, and it's so tight, but the best 4-3 defensive end in football here in Danielle Hunter. Still a young guy, almost still a prospect in a way. You see him coming out of LSU a few years ago, and the guy had 2.5 career sacks, and he was a dominant run defender. Just kind of the profile, the freak athletic profile, and the Vikings turn him into a top-tier pass rusher that quickly. So that scares me on what he actually could become, because he's just getting started, really, and he's very consistent and a dominant pass rusher. We see him come up in the crazy, important moments for the Vikings there. An example would be the playoff game against the Saints. Absolutely insane for them. Pretty much won them the game there down the stretch. So he's going to continue to get better every step of the way, and that's a scary thing about a young Danielle Hunter here. Von Miller at number 3 once was considered maybe number 1. You can, like I said, you can definitely argue it right now. The stats really won't show. He was more of a pressure presence, but he did have some production. Now he's got the help outside, opposite of him, I should say, of Bradley Chubb. So he can be back and getting, he's never been really the consistently, the crazy, 18, 19 sacks, but the presence there alone is crazy. And yeah, I think definitely more productive this year. That puts him at number 3. Zadarius Smith at number 2. If you guys were with us through last year, this was my defensive MVP of the 2019 NFL season, and there was no hesitation there. I thought this guy was the best defensive player in all of football. Nothing against some of those other guys, Stephon Gilmore, Aaron Donald, nothing against those guys. Well-deserving as well, but I just thought Zadarius Smith was the best defensive player of football, hands down. I think if you watch the guy play, he is more than an edge rusher, just an edge rusher. If you watch him pre-snap, he gets in the offensive line, he gets in the quarterback's heads, both their heads. Nobody knows what he's going to do. It's mind games, but at the same time, it's not just that. It's just the production, the play, rushing from the outside, rushing from the inside. See him line up on the defensive line sometimes. See him line up off the ball, but rushing from the inside. He's kind of that blitz option too when he's a pass rusher. You rarely see that. So he's the game plan nightmare. Usually he created for the rest of his players. So that's the key thing there. Created sacks for your teammates. He led the NFL with 20, I believe it was, created sacks for his teammates. So that doesn't really show up on his stats as well. And that's what he does. If you watch him, If you watch even a game, he's creating for other people. And usually those guys don't have the crazy production, but he did. I thought he showed up at the big moments as well. So that was last year, and this ranking is for this year. So that's kind of the tough part here. But there's really nothing that tells, some teams can try to game plan to see him a second time or maybe a third time around because they're a division rival. They can try to game plan, try to do something to slow him down a bit, and it's possible, but there's really nothing that tells me this is going to go away or anything. This is just we seen him the last year on the Ravens. That's where he kind of broke out, and he was, well inside of a top 32 pass rusher, well inside, and he's really getting going. He's a young pass rusher. And then first year on the Packers with a lot of first-year Packers on the Packers around that defense, and he's able to do that. So I think he's going to continue to grow. But I still got Khalil Mack at number 1. I think he's the best pass rusher, arguably the best defensive player in all of football in general. This is an absolute dominant player. When we talk about those players that show up in the must-show-up situations, I think Khalil Mack's a good example of that, really showing he's facing the more, just as much double teams. Actually, Clowney faced, I think, the most double teams last year when he, on average when he was in the game. We'll talk about Clowney and a couple other guys in a second here. But Khalil Mack facing a lot of the double teams, and pretty much the game plan on him is pretty much just hold him, which is a lot, for a lot of tackles, I guess, in today's NFL. But just the presence of Khalil Mack just changes everything, and he really had to carry that group last year. And I'm banking on a big year this year, an insane amount of sacks. You got Robert Quinn outside of him. I think Robert Quinn, like I talked about, his production can go down a little bit, but him being there is going to create Khalil Mack's production to go up quite a bit. They got Akeem Hicks back in there. So I think Khalil Mack has a ridiculous season, and he doesn't really have to have those crazy numbers to know what his presence, really is. He just shows up at those game-changing moments, and that's what Khalil Mack is. So I still got him at number one. I've had him at number one for quite some time. Still got him there. But guys like Zadarius Smith are coming. Guys like DANIELLE Hunter, T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, those guys are coming. So we'll see. Khalil Mack and Von Miller kind of been at the top for quite some time now. Can't wait to see these pass rushers in action this season. But a couple guys I want to talk about here. Jadeveon Clowney is a free agent. He's not on a team. It's pretty crazy. I like Clowney a lot. This is a beast. I think I'm higher on him than most people. He faced an insane amount of double teams last year. Talk about the guys that show up at the right moments. All those primetime games that Seattle had this year, all those big-time games, Clowney was an animal getting through double teams like crazy. He's an elite run defender from the edge as well. I think you can line him up pretty much anywhere. It's kind of another hybrid guy. It's a guy that I think can play. Well, I know he can play 4-3 end or 3-4 outside linebacker, but I think he can play a 3-4 end as well, or even a linebacker. I think he's that talented of a football player. So it does depend on the team or same thing, the scheme he actually plays in. Who's around him, who's coaching him. That it matters. But I would put him around that top 10 range. I would definitely consider it. It possibly could be around the 12 range. It depends on the team. But that definitely does matter for this season. So we'll see who signs him. We'll see if it happens. Yannick Ngakoue is on the Jaguars right now, but he's not going to play for the Jaguars as far as I'm concerned here, as far as I know here. And they're talking about trades. There's no hurry right now because if he's in a place that he likes, he will play under the franchise tag. He just doesn't really want to be in Jacksonville. This is a guy that I think could be a top 15 pass rusher in that range. If we come back to the rankings, I have him around 16, 17. Don't be shocked. It depends on the team and the scheme there, of course. What's around him. So top 15 guy. And Everson Griffin coming from the Vikings, still unsigned as well. Maybe he's not as good as he was a few years ago, but still a very impressive pass rusher, of course. I would have him around that top 25 range, again, depending on what type of scheme he's in and who's around him there, the system. So these are three guys that would make this list. There's a lot of other guys that didn't make this list that it was a tough time leaving them out. I talked about Montez Sweat. Talked to Marcus Davenport, another young pass rusher from the Saints, and he seems to stay healthy. I think that guy's got a bright future, still a lot of upside. There's a lot of guys here that really could be that could make this list. I mean, a guy like Clavon Chason, a rookie out there, could definitely make Carlos Dunlap from the Bengals. A lot of really good. I think Vic Beasley is going to have somewhat of a breakout year for the Titans, unless maybe they sign Jadeveon Clowney, so then maybe less reps for a guy like Vic Beasley. So there's a lot of guys. We can talk about them in the comments if you want to follow us on Twitter, and you can usually answer everybody on there. Link in the description for that. And many other things there. Please subscribe. Please smash that like button. Would really appreciate all that. Appreciate the support. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.